Hello and welcome back to your favorite concerning yet somehow appealing corner of the internet. Today, Portugal, the line of Portuguese, Fados, and this guy. And today's story is about 11 people that decided to run for president. Yes, that's right, the 2026 president's election is happening this Sunday. And it has a record of 11 candidates. Funny enough, 11 candidates is also just like a football team, which could be the only thing more popular in Portugal than politics. And the interesting thing here is that no one is set to have a clear majority. There's not a clear favorite. It's a very interesting race. And if no one is declared winner, there will be a runoff in February 8th. But trust me, this isn't just any election. It's funny. It's wild, confusing, and a darkly committed free-for-all that could determine the tone of the Portuguese democracy for the years to come. We have polls flipping like sardines on a grill, candidates ranging from a punk rock star to a former admiral. All of this to say, é uma confusão do diablos, a devil of a confusion. Today, we're gonna break down the Portuguese elections, the plot twist, the stakes, and of course, the info. Let's start with the polling chaos. There's 5 front runners and a nation shrugging. The polls this year are almost as straightforward as a dish bacalhau abraço, a delicious jumble of cod, eggs, and potatoes. So much like this polling numbers, a mess. But in my case, for this channel, a delicious mess. On any given day, you would see headlines such as Seguro jumps to first, only to be followed by Ventura surges ahead. It's a roller coaster. And the thing is, in the latest polling, there's a statistic tie of 5 candidates, meaning your guess is as good as mine. Meanwhile, 10 to 12% are undecided, wandering, looking like a lost tourist looking for the closest pastel de nata. The thing is, the indecision is unprecedented in Portugal, a far cry from last presidential elections in 2021, when the incumbent president blew away the polls. The thing is, many are putting the money on Mendes, who 33% think will be on top, and Ventura with 22%, even though those were not leading the intention voting polls. Only 11% predicted Segura would make it to the final 2, despite him leading the polls. Confusing? I know. It's as if the Portuguese people are saying, we will tell you who we like, but we're not sure that he will actually win. It's like an entire nation doom-scrolling their democracy. To sum up, nobody knows what the hell is going to happen the election night. And it's really interesting. The only safe bet is that no one is cracking the 50% in the first round. Because with 11 candidates on the polls, no one can amass a big majority. After all, Portugal does believe in a balanced diet. So it's more than likely that we'll have to get ready for round 2 in February. And a face-off between the 2 most voted candidates. Once the dust, or should I say, the pastel de nata, clears. And the uncertainty brings anxiety to some, because depending who wins, Portugal could be looking at anything, from a polite ideological debate to a full-on cage match. Will it be the moderate center-right against the moderate center-left? Or establishment figure versus a more popular figure? We'll get to those scenarios. But first, let's meet the 11 players, shall we? So this is the representation of democracy at its finest. We have 11 candidates who are completely different, but they all could turn out to be president. We have serious contenders and seriously eccentric long shots. So let's see. Let's do starting 11 style, shall we? Andre Pestana. Think of him as the protest candidate. He's a high school teacher and the leader of a teachers' union, known for school strikes. He's an independent running on the slogan, É hora de abrir pestana, which literally translates to, it's time to open your eyelashes. A pun on his name, meaning wake up. Pestana talks as if he is the voice of the workers, or the downtrodden, the trabalhadores, fighting against inequality, corporate greed, and underfunding public services. He wants to be the voice of the voiceless. And he's especially angry about the public hospital crisis, with emergency rooms being closed down due to shortages. Essentially, he's saying the system is broken and regular working people are getting screwed. Admirable, but he's barely a blip, 1% of the vote. Still, you have to respect a man that seriously says "é hora de abrir pestana." George Pinto, or in this case, Jorge Pinto. At 38, he is the youngest, and he represents Livre, which means free, a tiny progressive ecologist party. Pinto is an environmental engineer, so a hint of a green party, tech nerd with a hint of realism. His slogan, Presidente Presente, meaning he will be the present president, as opposed to absent, I guess, ghost in the nation. No, perhaps. He, of course, is big on climate and housing rights, but with less than 1% of the polls. The biggest impact he might get is just getting some left-wing votes. Pinto likely will not be president, but he sure will be present, as in attending all the debates and reminding people that climate change is real, because clearly we haven't had enough lecturing about that. Obrigado, George. Humberto Nuno Correia. Don't worry if you've never heard of him. Most Portuguese haven't either. Correia is an independent with no party backing. A 65-year-old retired painter from Algarve. He once ran for mayor of Faro and lost. His campaign slogan is Agir para construir Portugal. Act to build Portugal. And it's as generic as it sounds. He's polling at effectively 0. Even his most immediate family might be on the fence. But hey, he gathered more than 9,000 signatures for the ballot, which is in and of itself a big accomplishment. If you're looking for the longest citizen long shot, Correia is your man. He's here to make up some numbers and probably sell some paintings. Manuel João Vieira. This guy brings the color. Vieira, 63, is a satirical candidate. Literally a comedian and musician who has turned running for president into a performance. He's run and lost in 2001, 2011, and 2016. And darn it, he's back for 2026. He's the leader of a band named Enapad 2000, and he's basically a troll candidate. But hey, never count them out because we all know what happened in the USA. His official occupation, perennial candidate. His campaign promises, buckle up. He once said, I will give you one if I get elected. He even blurted out the Ferraris for everyone. Yes, a Ferrari in every garage. And he also said, I will ban illnesses and I will impose free parking for everyone. Honestly, what a platform. Ban illnesses and put an end to parking fees. Who wouldn't support that? Why hasn't anyone tried that? In the debates, he's a comedic relief, cracking absurd one-liners between serious candidates. So, no chance of winning. But he makes the election way more entertaining. Those four above, let's be honest, are not going to be president. But they do add a spice to the race. They represent protest, fringe, unhappiness, and a parody of a spectrum of the Portuguese political world. Now, moving up the food chain. The ideological left-wing politicians that actually have parties behind them. Catherine Martins, or Catarina Martins. If you follow Portuguese politics, you know Catarina. She is the former leader of the Left Bloc, a pro-social justice, pro-environment left-wing party. She is 52, a sitting member of the European Parliament, and a trained actress, by the way, so she can deliver lines with dramatic flair. Her slogan, Contigo, which means with you, as opposed to without you. Martins champions ideas like wealth taxes, green transition, and fighting precarity. Essentially, she is the progressive socialist saying that the Socialist Party hasn't been socialist enough. However, the left-center vote is crowded. With the older socialist candidates running, Catarina is polling around 3 to 4%. That said, she did overtake the communists in one poll, so good for you, Portugal. So she's winning the battle of leading the who is not going to win on the left. So congratulations on that, I guess. I mean, she is a respected figure, and her presence ensures conversations such as inequality, housing, and climate stay on the agenda. Antonio Felipe, representing the old school left, and he is the candidate of, yes, the Communist Party. Picture a veteran politician with a serious face and an amazing copy of Marx at home. Antonio Felipe has been a communist for decades now. He is basically part of the furniture in the Portuguese parliament. He first entered parliament in 1987, when half of the parliament wasn't even born yet, with Como povo, por abril, por Portugal, with the people, for April, for Portugal. So yes, he is evoking the revolution ideals. The man is literally running in 1970s nostalgia. In debates, he is seen quoting the Constitution of 1976 like it's a holy scripture, and denouncing capital and imperialism in that, communist way. Polls put him around 2 to 3%, neck and neck with Katarina for the bronze medal of the left. Essentially, he's the safeguard of the true old left, safeguarding communism, safeguarding the revolution. We salute you, comrade, even if most of Portugal won't. Now we have reached the big five, the 5 candidates who actually have a shot of becoming president. And these are the folks that are at the top of the polls leading the chaotic mess. They span the political spectrum: center-left, center-right, left, and right. If this was a season of Game of Thrones, these 5 would be the main claimants. Now it's up to you who decide who should be king. Antonio José Seguro. Don't be fooled by the last name, which Seguro translates to sure, secure, or safe in Portuguese. And indeed, he is trying to be the safe choice for the center-left. He is the official candidate of the Socialist Party of Portugal, the party that has governed Portugal for the best part of the last decade. He is the leader and he was a candidate on the last elections. He is a candidate and he used to be opposition leader. Fun backstory, he lost an internal power struggle fight to Antonio Costa, who was the former prime minister. Now Costa himself is in Brussels after resigning amid the scandal, and Seguro has been called off the bench. He launched his campaign by saying, Futuro Seguro, very original. Never let a good name go to waste. He is positioning himself as a moderate, statesman-like figure, affable, steady, and someone that can heal the country. Some people say he reminds them of Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, who was a consensus builder. Seguro has been claiming in the polls, and some polls show him up to 21%. A big deal for someone that most wrote off initially. But here's the thing, he's a bit bland. Think oatmeal without sugar. And in the Portuguese elections, the PES leaders historically struggle, as the center-left voters sometimes like to pick independent candidates. Seguro's speech is basically, let's return to normal, let's have a president that won't rock the boat. After 3 prime ministers in 3 years is the new normal in Portugal. But will enough people find him inspirational? That's open for questioning. Some critics are saying that Seguro wants to unite the country, but first he has to unite his own party. There was an initial infighting in PES for candidacy. Some socialists wanted literally anybody else. But at the end, PES rallied behind him and he is the visible face. Now he carries the torch of the center-left and hopes that enough voters will follow the light. Luis Marques Mendes. If experience had a face, it would probably belong to this man. Marques Mendes is 68, just 1 year off, 6'7". He is the center-right candidate, backed by many conservative parties. In fact, he's the former leader of PSD and a long-time minister before that. These days, he's a famous TV pundit, and he has spent some years in prime time, giving political commentary, just like Rex Lex. He became known for leaking inside scoops, earning a political gossip fame. He literally suspended his candidacy to PSD to run for president as an above-party figure, though everybody knows he is the establishment's choice. His slogan, O valor da experiencia, the value of experience. Translation, I'm old, I've been around, I won't screw up. He is like the wise uncle. Now, Marques Mendes is not a large man, physically speaking. He's famously short. I won't tease anyone for being short, because I'm above that. Despite the fact he is a political giant in terms of connections. However, in this election, he has struggled to break out. At one point, polls had him essentially 5th. Part of the reason being he's splitting the center-right vote with other 2 candidates. And he's perceived as, frankly, a bit boring. His attempt to hype up experience sometimes comes off as, hey, I'm part of the boys club. During the campaign, he has also had some fights with other candidates that turned quite nasty. More on that soon. The good thing for Mendes is that most candidates assume that he will be part of the final 2. And if he gets there, he might consolidate more moderate votes, moderate conservatives, and even some moderate liberals. The question is, can he squeeze to the top? And it's not longer a certainty. If he fails, it would be a historic upset for the center-right. Marques Mendes is basically fighting for relevance against two other candidates from the right. And if experience doesn't get him there, maybe he would experience defeat. Andre Ventura. Here comes trouble. Ventura is the agitator of the race, leader of the party Chega, meaning enough, as in enough of everyone. If you cross Donald Trump with a Portuguese TV commentator, you would get Andre Ventura. Incidentally, he was a TV pundit commentator before politics. No joke. He first ran for president in 2021, got about 12%, finishing third. And since then, his party support has exploded. Chega became the second largest party in the parliament, and he now holds the title of leader of the opposition. His platform is a mix of anti-establishment, tough on crime ideas, and patriotic Portuguese rhetoric. So, hard to dislike. Think law and order, anti-corruption and anti-elites. His slogan, Os Portugueses Primeiro, means Portuguese first. Subtle, right? I wonder how he came up with that. It's basically make Portugal great again, in different words. When he speaks, it's usually to call something una vergonha, a disgrace. For example, he will yell about corruption scandals, high taxes, or criminals getting light sentences. Isto é una vergonha, while everybody boos. And he has big support in Portugal, and is one of the favorites. Ventura is very charismatic and entertaining, and very appealing to some voters that feel left behind or fed up with traditional politicians. And listen, Ventura's rise is one of the biggest narratives here. A few years ago, nobody would think that Portugal, known for its moderate politics, would have such a significant right or far-right force. Now we do, and he is it. He could win the first round, though that is unlikely. If Ventura makes it to the last round, expect all hell to break loose and have yet another cordon sanitaire in Europe, because that's exactly what we need, apparently. Saying you're pro-democracy, but as soon as someone you don't like wins, you unite with the rest to not let the people have what they voted for. Very democratic, if you ask me. Very similar to the situation in France and Le Pen. This is the thing, the Portuguese presidency is largely ceremonic. But having Ventura in Belém would freak out a lot of people. So Ventura's presence is both electrifying and terrifying, depending who you ask. He has had inflammatory remarks, but that only makes his base like him more. Because again, he is like the new school of politicians, likable, rallying with Portuguese flags and shouting enough, from EU corruption scandals to mass migration issues and everything in between. Love him or hate him, he's a force to be reckoned. And then the question comes, if he makes it to the final round, will Portugal do what other European countries have done? For now, he's certainly made himself impossible to ignore. He has literally burst into scene like the Kool-Aid man. But instead of saying, oh yeah, he's saying, Chega, Enrique Gouveia e Melo. Now here's an interesting one, the non-partisan type. He's a 65-year-old retired admiral of the Portuguese Navy. If you heard of the successful COVID vaccine rollout campaign in Portugal, he is the one that did it. During the pandemic, he became a sort of a folk hero, appearing in military uniform during vaccination campaigns. He was a no-nonsense, efficient man and carried the stern yet caring military grandpa vibes. At one time, he stepped in front of anti-vaxxers in military uniform. Why was he in camo? Because he famously said, for me, this is war, meaning the fight against COVID. Yes, he literally approached the public health campaign like a military operation, and it worked. So naturally people said, you know what, maybe you should run for office. Fast forward, he's now running as independent, and with the slogan, my party is Portugal. He did not want to be backed by any major party, positioning himself above politics. In early polling, he was leading, but he had some stumbles. He's not a polished politician, and he sometimes comes across as vague, and he has been in heated feuds. Mendes accused Gouveia e Melo of lacking sense of state and insinuating he was running smear tactics, saying the mask has fallen. The admiral fired back, saying he was doing a dirty campaign and challenged him to explain his interests. Implying Mendes had shadowy lobbyists behind him. Basically, the admiral was telling the politicians, I know who you are, explain yourself. Despite all of that, he remains popular because he's seen competent and unattained by partisan mud. He promised a firm hand and patriotic values. All the good stuff. But by rejecting parties, he doesn't really have a plan. He could still win it all. After all, an admiral is what the Portuguese might just need. Someone to steer the ship through stormy seas. He's trying to protect the image of a unifier that can toast with both communists to monarchists. Let's see if the I'm here for Portugal carries him to the presidency. João Contrim de Figueiredo, last but not least of the big five. Here comes the libertarian-leaning liberal, in a hurry, who led the Libertarian Initiative Party in 2023. He's a pro-market, small government party. Think European liberal, not American liberal. They love entrepreneurship, low taxes, and individual liberty. He jumped into the headlight after an internal fight. Their first pick dropped out, but endorsed him. He's got the backing of a lot of young urban professionals. His slogan is a president with the right mind state, the right profile, trying to picture himself as a forward-thinking modernizer. He is smooth-talking and certainly media-savvy. He was a consultant, and he even ran the National Tourism Agency. In debates, he has been sharp and usually outperforming expectations. They usually rate him best of the best. He tends to hammer on economic reforms, innovation, and cutting red tape. He'll happily criticize both the socialists and the old-school right. Contrim has surprisingly edged to the top of the polls, hovering around 15 to 18%. Some days he's third, some days he's second, or even first. Not even bad for a third force. His path to the presidency, however, is tough. He would need to steal a lot of the center-right votes from Mendes, and even some centrist votes from Seguro. But in a five-way dead heat, weird things can happen. If he got, say, 20%, and the others got 18 to 19, he could slip into a second place. Stranger things have happened in politics. If he did reach a runoff, he would picture himself as the unifier against extremism, if Ventura is the opponent, or as a fresh alternative if facing other older candidates. Internationally, people might compare him to Emmanuel Macron. Nationally, some people just call him the liberal, with a mix of admiration and suspicion, depending on the view of the free markets. In any case, Contrim de Figueiredo has made this race unpredictable. He's also the only major candidate without either big party backing or a single celebrity status. He represents a new political way. Whether Portugal is ready to imagine his vision for Portugal remains to be seen. But his campaign did add a new flavor to the mix. Perhaps a dash of Chicago School economics on this feijoada. Whew, 11 candidates. Did you get all of that? You better. If not, don't worry. Even Portuguese voters are struggling. It's the most number of candidates even since democracy was restored in 1974. It beat the previous record of 10. Initially, a whopping 45 people expressed interest in running. Thankfully, the Constitutional Court filtered down to 14 candidates, and now 11 valid ones, after tossing a few for not having enough votes or missing paperwork. Pro tip, if you plan to be president, make sure you get the paperwork right. So Portugal essentially said the more the merrier, from far left to far right to everything in between. In a way, it is a sign of a healthy democracy, a wide open contest. But it also means voting fragmentation like never before. Let's step back and clarify what the Portuguese president does and why this election matters more than personalities. Portugal is a semi-presidential democracy, but leaning heavily in the semi part. President is not an exclusive day-to-day ruler. That's the prime minister's job. Instead, the president is the head of state, meant to be stabilizing, moderating figure above parties. They cut ribbons, give speeches, and mediate political discussions. And crucially, they have a couple of powerful tools in their back pocket. The president can veto laws, even though the parliament can override the veto with a majority. And the nuclear option. They can dissolve parliament and call new elections in a crisis. They're like a referee who watches the game. The president also appoints prime ministers, usually a formality. They appoint whoever wins the majority of the parliament. Largely ceremonial, but they can be very influential and powerful during turbulent times. And boy have there been turbulent times in Portugal. Consider this, Portugal has gone through 3 general elections in 3 years, 2022, 2024, and 2025, thanks to political crisis, making it the most unstable period in decades. The incumbent president, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, had to dissolve parliament in 2023 amid a corruption scandal that toppled the entire socialist government. Then a new election in 2024 brought a weak PSD-led government into power, which also fell apart, triggering another snap election in 2025. Seriously, it's like the country has been stuck in Groundhog Day. People are frustrated and politicians are exhausted. Hence, this presidential election comes at a time when people are craving stability. They want a president that can stop the merry-go-round of crisis, or at least a better referee. And if government falters, guess who has to step in and decide to call yet another election? The president. So the stakes here, unlike most presidential elections around Europe, are high. Also, there are hot-button issues waiting for the president's veto pen. For example, the controversial citizenship law, which was passed by the current parliament, aimed at restricting how people can lose their Portuguese citizenship. It was struck down by the Constitutional Court, but it's coming back for another round. The president might have to judge if this revised law respects the Constitution. There's also a package of labor reforms that already sparked street protests and even a general strike. This will land on the president's desk. Sign or veto. And let's not forget the euthanasia law. Parliament approved legalizing it in 2022, but it was stopped because of constitutional challenges. It might reach final implementation on the next president's watch. And this is a big debate. These are deeply divisive issues in Portugal and in Europe for all that matter. Citizenship rules, workers' rights, and the right to die. And the president's stance could influence the outcome. So even if the role is above politics, the person will of course influence policy. Okay, so if no one gets 50% plus 1 vote on January 18, the top 2 will face off in a second round in February 8th. Historically, Portuguese elections always end in the first round because there's always consensus with the frontrunner. Only once since 1974 a second round has been needed, and that was in 1986, which was a very famous clash between the left and the right. This year could be the second runoff ever in Portugal. And given how fragmented things are, it's almost guaranteed to happen. So mark your calendars for February 8th, because this Sunday it's not over unless one candidate miraculously gets 50% plus 1 vote, which would mean half the country would rally behind them, which, judging by the polls, is impossible. So if it happens, there might be foul play. So picture this. Sunday, January 18, we might see headlines like candidate A gets 22%, candidate B gets 19%, candidate D 18%, candidate E, etc. But then it's the game of round 2, head-to-head with the 2 most voted candidates. And the winner gets the keys to the Pink Palace. And who faces who will matter enormously. Each scenario is different. Seguro versus Mendes would be the classic PS against PSD duel. Seguro versus Ventura would be extremely polarizing in Portugal. The moderate left versus the new right. Essentially, a referendum about how much the country can take. Ventura versus Mendes would leave the entire left on a weird position. Do they vote for the right-wing establishment to stop the rise of the new right? Many would hold their noses and do it. Gouveia and Melo versus anyone. It's interesting because he's independent. Could actually attract voters from both sides as the above party option. For instance, if it was Gouveia and Melo versus Ventura, he would probably galvanize all the moderates to stop Ventura. If it's Gouveia versus Seguro, it would be outsider versus party man. And Contrin versus whoever adds yet another twist. A liberal outsider could pull center-right votes if facing a socialist, or could pull centrist or leftist votes if facing Ventura or Mendes. The point is, the second round will likely become a whole new race, with coalitions quickly forming. Expect a lot of "I endorse so-and-so" from the eliminated candidates. At its core, this election is about where Portugal goes after a rough patch. The country has been in a political uphill recently. A major corruption scandal in 2023, the 2023 tattoo operation, if you're curious, read about it. It brought down a prime minister. Economic anxieties are simmering. Public services like healthcare are strained. We mentioned hospitals and emergency rooms closing, a real crisis. And public trust in institutions is wavering. Do you see the pattern yet with the rest of the European elections? If not, you will. The Portuguese are proud of the democracy. It's one of Western Europe's youngest ones. But they're not blind to its problems. There's a widespread disillusionment with the traditional political class. And I would argue that is also happening in most of European countries, if not all of them. Which is why outsider figures like Gouveia or Melo and bomb throwers like Ventura are being so popular. There is also fatigue with constant elections, broken promises, and some politicians not even addressing the day-to-day problems of the Portuguese, or the Europeans for that matter. Things like wages, security, and healthcare. So with the president, they choose to symbolize a response to all of that. And seeing the outcome of the Portuguese elections might let us know the outcome of future European elections. A vote for Segura or Ventura might signal a desire to return to stability. Let's act like grown-ups and handle this. A vote for Ventura might just well be a middle finger to the establishment, saying, we're tired with all of this you're saying, let's do something about it. A vote for Gouveia and Melo might say, we want competence and no BS, even if it comes from the military. A vote for Cotrim might mean we want economic freedom. Let's try something different. And a vote for the smaller ones might say, let's not forget about the far left and the communists. It's quite beautiful in its own way. How an election can capture a national mood. Whoever wins will face a 5-year term at the Pink Palace to rebuild public confidence. They will need to work with parliament and government, which as of now is a fragile center-right government agreement. And possibly they will have to play mediator if there is a gridlock. If a crisis comes, financial, political, or even, God forbid, another pandemic, the president might need to step in as the voice of reason. The next president could restore stability and dignity to the politics. But this shows that good advice might only go so far. People will judge the elected president for his action. And some argue that the lack of it brought Portugal to its crisis right here. In sum, this election has it all. Drama, comedy, and anxiety. And hopefully, fado playing in the background. It's like a season of Netflix that everybody suddenly binges at the end, because the ending might be explosive. And as an international viewer, you should care, because it's a story how even a small, peaceful country can face big questions that many democracies are going to need to face. How do we deal with the new politics? How do we renew faith in institutions? How do we protect rights? How do we enforce laws while keeping society cohesive? And can satire and sanity coexist? This last question clearly, masterfully answered in my channel. So tune in January 18th to see who advances, and likely February 8th again for the finale. Will it be Captain Stability, Admiral COVID, Professor Seguro, Mr. Experience, or the shocker who ultimately wins? Or perhaps Portugal imagines something different. Whatever happens, one thing is for sure. Portuguese voters will have earned a celebratory glass of champagne after navigating this ballot. And to whoever becomes president, we say, good luck, you're definitely going to need it. And as always, if you like what I say, try to look me up. If you don't like what I say, try to lock me up. Until then, it is what it is.